My real story, I was born in a place called El Paso, Texas. And I was born to two very, very young parents. They were great people, loved me, loved my sisters, but they were just right out of high school when I was born. And they were still very, very immature. So they liked to drink, they liked to party. So I grew up in this environment, like most people these days, unfortunately. I grew up in an environment where I saw a lot of drinking, I saw a lot of partying. I was exposed to a very pornographic culture from a very young age through movies and music and television. And this is where I learned about my body and learned how to conduct relationships. Um, like I said, I grew up in this kind of culture, and I still remember when I first held hands with a girl. I remember this rush that I had. It was something new and it was exciting. It was something that made my heart pound like crazy. This rush was something that I began to live for. I mean, as soon as after I first held hands with a girl, it was all I could think about. And then soon after, I experienced my first kiss. Same thing. This new and exciting rush was so awesome. Again, it was kind of what I started to live for. This is what started this fire that eventually consumed me, because I started living for this rush. I began feeling the urge to do more than just kiss. And as that urge grew, I began slowly trying new things. Well, throughout high school, I dated a lot of girls. I didn't have any kind of intention of a long-lasting relationship. I made a lot of mistakes, did a lot of dumb things, and I hurt a lot of people. I was probably just your regular guy, right? I slowly, let me say first, I had 4 younger sisters, and I was a terrible example for my younger sisters. I began to slowly become addicted to lust, into sexual gratification. You know, it had this control over me, and it's how I made my decisions. It had this control over me, it's how I made my decisions. I found myself doing things that I previously said that I wouldn't do. You know, I remember saying, I would never do something like that. I would never be that kind of person. What kind of person does those things? But after time, I found I had somehow become this person, you know, that I said I would never be. I got to a point in my life where, you know, all my relationships were ending terribly. I was in this very dark place, and I could feel myself just changing into a person that I didn't like. I felt like I had lost all innocence, and I couldn't shake this feeling of guilt and shame and embarrassment, and they followed me around kind of like a shadow. I knew I needed something to change my direction, so I decided to sign myself up for something called an Acts retreat. It's big in Texas. Well, about a year or two prior to that, my dad had gone, my wife always corrects me there, so when she watches this video, hey, guess what? I said had went, right? Wait, which one's the right one? Had gone. Dang. Okay, all right, forget all that. My dad had gone on an Acts retreat about a year or two prior to that, and when he came back from the Acts retreat, he was really weird. He started doing these weird things like saying, I'm sorry, and hey, let's pray a rosary together as a family, and we're not missing Mass. It was so weird, you know, and I always wondered what happened. Is it me, or is there like a woo kind of thing? Is that me? Okay. Yeah. All right. So my dad went on this Acts retreat, and he came back doing these really weird things, and I thought like he had a vision and saw God at this retreat. And you have to know my dad to know why I'm saying that. I love my dad. He's great. He's fantastic. But I'm just telling you that when he came back, changed like that, I figured God must have shown up at that retreat. So that was something that always kind of lingered in my heart. So I decided, well, maybe I should go to one of these Acts retreats. Well, at this Acts retreat, I met a girl named Diane. Diane was this really sweet and innocent girl. She was so beautiful. But the things that I noticed about her weren't just her physical beauty. I became captivated by her faith. I saw her pray, and when I saw her pray, she looked like she was talking to God. And I always felt like when I prayed, I was like sending out a fishing line and then just like waiting for a bite. Like I'm not sure, God, if you're there, I'm sending this signal out to you. Let me know. Send me something back. But Diane knew like she connected with God somehow. She was the kind of girl where if you said a dirty joke, she didn't get it. I was the kind of guy, if you said a regular joke, in my head it became a dirty joke. This was the difference between us two, and she had something that I didn't have, this innocence, this serenity, this just genuine joy. I mean, on the outside I seemed like I was okay, but on the inside it was chaos. Diane had this genuine happiness, and I wanted it. Whatever it was that she had, I wanted it. So I started becoming really attached to Diane, and I eventually, at some point, I finally got the courage. Hold on a second. Oh, that's Diane right there. You see that? Hello. Hi. No, yeah. No, I'm here in the middle of a talk. Yeah, no, that's cool. I told him already that you were awesome. You want to say hi really quick? Okay, 1 second. Hold on, guys. Okay, can you say hi?
Hello, everyone.
Hi! Oh, cool. Okay, I gotta go, okay? I'm gonna hang up on you abruptly because I haven't really told much of the story yet, okay? Bye. Okay. All right. So anyway, she was awesome, Oh gosh, where was I? Let's see. Got the courage too. Yes, thank you. So finally, eventually, at some point, I got the courage to tell her that I liked her and that I wanted to start dating. And she said, well, I like you too, but here's the deal. If you want to even think about having a relationship or even just the possibility of a relationship, there are 3 things that you have to do. And she said the first thing is you have to ask my dad's permission for marriage. Whoa. Take it easy. Slow down. No. So she said the first thing is you have to ask my dad's permission to date. Right? Whoa. Okay. You have to ask my dad's permission to date. And I said, all right, that's fine. No problem. Piece of cake. I can do that. What's the next thing? And she said, okay, well, the next thing is you have to read this book. And she hands me this book. And she says, every time that I tell the story, the book gets a little bit bigger. But it was at least that big. I don't have 2 hands. I can't show you exactly how big it was. Okay, it wasn't that big. It was like a Harry Potter size book. All right. This book was called Arms of Love by a woman named Carmen Marcoux. And whatever one is the one that's not real, fiction or nonfiction or whatever. Thank you. It was like Twilight, but for Catholics. All right. And so much better than Twilight. Anyway, so she hands me this book and she says, you have to read this book because I'm not going to tell you the 3rd task until you finish this book. There's some things in this book that you need to know that I want to tell you, and you won't understand them until you read the book. So she won't give me the 3rd task until I read the book. So what do? I read the book in about a week. Huge book, like I said, about a Harry Potter size. And I wasn't a reader at the time. All right, I was in a fraternity and stuff, and I wasn't into reading really huge chastity books. But when she told me that, I said, sure, give me that book, and I read it in about a week. Well, of course, I wanted to know the 3rd task, but the other reason I read that book so fast was because I fell in love with this book. I related to the male character at the beginning of the book, and I wanted so badly to be like the character at the end of the book. So I finished the book, and I come back to her, and I'm all excited, and I say, I finished the book. What's the 3rd thing? And so she tells me the 3rd task, and I was not at all prepared for what she was about to ask of me. She starts to tell me about this experience that she had with a guy who had hurt her after he tried to take advantage of her. He humiliated her, and she was so hurt after this experience that she drove herself straight to a nearby chapel, and she makes this promise to Mary and to God that she will not kiss another man until she is standing with him at the altar on her wedding day. And then she tells me, if you want to be with me, then you have to take on that promise too. My first reaction was to try and convince her that was not a good idea. I said, well, that's great. That's amazing that you want to take that promise on. That's awesome. But I don't think kissing's a bad thing. And she says, oh, I know. Kissing's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. The reason I made that promise is because I want to prevent myself from doing more than just kissing. Kissing can easily lead into other things, and if I don't kiss, then I don't have to worry about everything that comes after it. If you think about it, going upstairs is, usually you do it one step at a time, right? Can you jump from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs? If there's like 10 steps, right? No, normally you can't. But what you can do is you can go from the floor level to step 1. That's pretty easy. And it's pretty easy to go from step 1 to step 2, and step 2 to step 3, and so on and so forth until you get to step 10, right? And so what she's saying is, I want to cut out step 1 so that I can't accidentally jump up to step 10. And she says, the other thing I know about making this promise is that the guy that's willing to take on this promise with me will be the guy that I can marry. Because I know that this is the guy that loves me for me and not just my body. And in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, that's sound logic. That's a really good point. But I'm thinking, I couldn't do this even if I wanted to, right? And I was wondering, well, how do you show your affection for somebody when you've been together with them for weeks or months or years? If you can't kiss, how do you show them you love them? I didn't ask her that at the time. I think I was just wondering that. And, but she caught me off guard big time. But I liked this girl so much. I reluctantly told her, well, if that's your promise, then I guess I have to respect that. She set the bar high, and she wasn't willing to compromise. She told me, take it or leave it, and since there was no negotiation, I had no choice but to accept the terms. I only said yes to that promise because I knew it was the only way I could be in a relationship with Diane. Well, luckily, that was enough to cause West Philadelphia, sorry. Get back into my groove. All right, so luckily that was enough to cause a major shift in my life. So I was, this caused a major shift in my life because I was something like a drug addict who went into rehab. In rehab, normally what they do is they isolate you away from the drug because you can't resist it on your own. If it's presented to you, normally you can't say no. I was a guy who could not say no. Well, in my rehab, I went through this hell. The first couple months for me were terrible. But as I went through that rehab, I began to slowly bleed out this addiction that I had to lust. Trying to kick my bad habits, my addictions for lust, to me at the time was like trying to cut off my own arm. It was like a part of who I was. It was so hard. It took me months working through it. But the good news is that my relationship with Diane started improving things for me. She was so physically distant that it was much easier for me to control myself. But at the same time, I was able to think a lot more clearly without the smoke of lust clouding my thoughts. Learning the truth of morality in the Catholic Church was so much easier when I wasn't constantly involved in sin. We went to a faith conference one Saturday, and on the seller's table, I found this book. I noticed this book called An Introduction to the Theology of the Body by Christopher West. I remembered that the book that Diane gave me, called Arms of Love, was based on something called Theology of the Body. So it piqued my interest. I was interested to know what this was all about. So I took this book home, and then I just devoured this book. Fell in love with the theology of the body. And I began to just, anything I could get my hands on concerning the theology of the body, I was just eating up. All right, so this teaching of the theology of the body was amazing. It opened my eyes to God's plan for life, love, sex, and marriage. It explained all of these desires that I had for union, and And it showed how God purposely created sex and male and female so that we could come to know him. This teaching of the theology of the body claimed that the marital union, the physical embrace between husband and wife, was a symbol of heaven, of the love and the nature of God. Something I had never heard before in my life. If we had the eyes to see God's wonderful plan for life, love, sex, and marriage, all of us would be blown away by its beauty and its power. This theology of the body opened my eyes to this whole new reality, something I didn't even know was out there. And I began to understand just how special Diane was, and her innocence became to me like a priceless work of art. My question: how do you show your affection for someone when you've been with them for weeks or months or years if you can't kiss? Became answered as I became this ultra ridiculous romantic. If you think about it, because Diane and I couldn't talk, what do you think we did most of the time when we got together? We invented this new thing that is guaranteed to help relationships everywhere. We talked. We talked and talked and talked. This girl could keep my attention for hours on end. We talked so much, I learned everything about her. I learned her favorite color, I learned her likes and her dislikes. I learned about her family. We shared our stories. I shared my past. She shared her past. I got to know everything about her, and I loved it. Something I was never used to. To me, at least at the time, it was foreign. I know maybe I'm crazy. Because we couldn't kiss, I had to find other ways to express my affection, and I was exploding with affection for her. Just exploding. So the other ways that I found were I often would buy her flowers. I would massage her feet. I would tell her how beautiful she was, how much she meant to me. I started writing these poems and writing songs for her and things like that. I even carried her around every once in a while. Like I said, it was ridiculous, ultra ridiculous, romantic. But because we couldn't kiss, and I was exploding with affection, I wasn't suppressing that affection. It just found new outlets. I found new ways to show her that I loved her, that I really cared for her, that she meant something to me. Oh yeah. So, all right, I'm going to tell you a quick story. Remember, I pretty much knew everything about her, and part of that was I knew her class schedule at UTSA. Stalker, I know, but I did. So she was having a bad week, and so one day I wrote her a song, and I took that song and took my guitar and went to UTSA, and because I knew her class schedule, I knew when she was getting out of class. And as she was coming out of class from the top level or the second floor, I was standing at the bottom of the floor, and there's hundreds of students around, and as she's walking down the stairs. And she had a bad day, and that week was bad, but that day was particularly bad. So I was like, well, great, I'll write you a little song and cheer you up. So I stood at the bottom of the stairs, and as she walked down the stairs, I played her this song. And yes, she cried. I don't know. People often ask us, did you have any physical contact before marriage? And the answer is yes. We looked at each other. Just kidding. Sorry. I always get that question. I also get a couple other questions I get are like, well, so did you kiss at all? Like, did you kiss on the cheek? One of the funniest questions I've received was it awkward saying goodbye? Like, did you guys like shake hands or did you like pound it? Like. Look. No one, is that for us? No one knew how to do romance like we knew how to do it. At first, we moved slowly. She was very cautious, and that was great for me because at the beginning, like I said, I couldn't control myself. So the greater distance that she kept from me physically, not emotionally, we talked all the time, right, was good for me. But after time, we became more comfortable. But the thing is that we weren't scared of physical contact. We didn't treat our relationship or our sexuality as though it was this ticking time bomb that was just ready to explode at any moment. We were not afraid of our desires. We respected them. It was the power, it was the blood of our relationship. We kissed on the cheek. I gave her tight hugs. We went dancing. We slow danced. We went salsa dancing all the time. I know. You see, purity is not about suppression. It's about learning how to appropriately express those desires that you have for touch and for union and for that rush that I was telling you about earlier. You know, most people, when they feel a desire for somebody else, they usually just make out, Like, so that question I was asked earlier, like, so what did you do? Like, you shake hands and stuff? Like, most people are like, all right, girl, I'll see you later. Nom, 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 nom. Like, nobody likes to see that, right? Well, we had the kind of affection that people liked to see. When we were saying goodbye, I would, caress her cheek. I'd give her a kiss on the cheek. Maybe I'd give her a kiss on the hand. And in a way, I was telling her, you are worth the wait. You're so worth the wait, right? Nobody wants to see you nom, nom, nom. But that kind of romance, is beautiful. It witnesses. It stirs something in your heart. Did we ever experience temptation? Yes, most definitely. Was it hard? At times, it was very hard. Other times, it was pleasurable. Is that weird? I actually enjoyed the sacrifice. It's kind of like working out, right? Once I got used to it, I felt like I was getting stronger and my chastity muscles were getting pretty huge. So I like that, right? But we made our mistakes. I don't want to, give the impression that we were like perfect or anything. We made our mistakes. You know what? We frequented confession. We prayed a lot together. We went to adoration together. We struggled. We fought, but we had our ups and downs. But we kept Christ and that promise at the center of our relationship. Diane always says that she initially made her promise as a way to punish herself because she didn't want to fall into the same bad habits. Eventually that promise became something that allowed her to honor God and live a joy-filled and chaste relationship. For me, this promise radically changed my life for the better. We were very proud of our promise. It's what made us unique. So over the next 2 years, we became very close. We started talking about marriage. However, we also stayed open to the possibility of a religious vocation. Life was wonderful. We prayed together, we laughed together, we had fun, and we did ministry together. Everything for a while was great. And then, one summer, Diane goes to World Youth Day in Sydney, Australia. Well, she comes back from World Youth Day, and she's just on fire, and she's telling me about this great time that she had, and she's telling me about these nuns that she met that she just loved. And she got so close to these nuns that she started to entertain a vocation to the religious life. And she told me that she was convinced that God was calling her. My heart just sank into my stomach. I had no idea what was going on. I was thinking, God, what are you doing? Why? Please just don't take her. My world was upside down, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? I thought we were meant for each other. I thought we were getting married. I thought we were going to have this wonderful, beautiful marriage and story, and now I just didn't know what to think. the biggest pain I think I had at the time was, this was about 2 years later, like I said, so the biggest pain I had was I'll never get to experience what it's like to kiss her, something I've been waiting for years. I'll never get to feel what that's like. And then I was like, what if another dude gets to kiss her? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill him. I had this rage for somebody I didn't even know, maybe didn't even exist, I don't know. I valued our relationship so much, and I realized that, even more than that, I valued what the relationship had done for me. I realized that I had no regrets, and I decided I just needed to swallow my fears and love Diane enough to allow her the opportunity to pursue God's call for her. So I thought, I just got to do what's best for her. Whether or not it's painful for me, one day while we were on the phone, I decided I'm just going to do what needs to be done. So I started telling her that, I loved her, and I was just so grateful that God had put her in my life. And I knew that my job was to do what was best for her, to protect her, to serve her. I knew that if we were called to marriage, my job would be to do what was best for her and to help her get to heaven. And if we weren't called to marriage, then I knew I still had to do what was best for her if I truly loved her. And whatever vocation she was called to was where she was going to find her fulfillment. So I told her, if this is where God's calling you, then I can't hold you back. I won't hold you back. I told her I loved her, and we parted ways. For about 3 days, we didn't talk. But after 3 days, she called me up and she said, will you pray with me? I'm still confused, and we need to pray for some guidance and support, and I need support. Will you come with me? And I said, of course. So we went together to the church, the Adoration Chapel that we were used to going to together, and I was just there for her, and we prayed together. Well, that day we prayed, we talked, we started laughing. I had such a good time. I remember that I had completely forgotten that we had agreed to go our separate ways. Even though I was in a lot of pain over those few days, that was an awesome day. Well, that week we started going to Mass and adoration every day together just to pray for guidance and support. And then somewhere out of nowhere, like a dam that was just holding back water, but in this case it was our love, it just broke. And this fire that we somehow had fizzled out and just needed to be rekindled was sparked. And we fell in love all over again. Except this time, there was a confidence to our relationship. And within about a month, we were engaged. You want to say that into here?
Aw.
I felt like a real man for the first time ever in my life. Men are created to be protectors, to serve the women that they love, to lay down their lives for them. For the first time, I said no to my body and my own desires, and I said yes to whatever God's will was for me. I finally figured out the solution to being a real man, and it's to be crucified, to love someone more than you love yourself. That day, when I told Diane that I loved her enough to support her pursuing God's call, even if it wasn't with me, I told her that I loved her. And I didn't just tell her, but I showed her that I loved her more than I loved myself. And that I feared her pain more than my own. She knew how much I loved her, and she knew what I was willing to do for her, and she knew that I was the guy that she could give herself to in marriage. So 1.5 years later, her and I are standing on the altar. She's beautiful, she's dressed in white, looking holy and just gorgeous. And I remember I had all my family and my friends there, and they all got to witness my very first kiss with my bride. No applause. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. When people ask me, how was that first kiss, well, what was it like? Did you attack each other after waiting all that time? I actually got that question one time. And the answer is no. If we treated each other like animals, we'd have never gotten to that point. And in fact, we had such a disciplined relationship. We had such a respectful love for each other that when it came time for us to share our first kiss as husband and wife, I didn't kiss her right away. I leaned in close to her. I put my hand on her cheek, and I whispered something in her ear. This is a little secret that we used to have, but then somewhere along the line, Diane started telling everybody about it, so I can tell you now. I whispered in her ear, "See how much I love you," before I kissed her. It was such a sweet, soft, and innocent kiss. We had waited 3.5 years to kiss, and just the touch of her lips was enough for me. Just the touch of her lips was worth the wait. One of the greatest things about that day and about that kiss was because it had been 3.5 years since I had kissed somebody, I didn't remember what it felt like. I was super nervous that day. I was hoping I didn't mess it up. I didn't remember what it felt like to kiss a girl. So when we finally shared our first kiss, it felt like my first kiss ever. And I felt like all that innocence that I had lost before I met Diane was just restored to me. I was like a little kid jumping inside my skin, like I had just gotten candy for the first time or something. So if you haven't seen my video before, what I want to do right now is share just a little part of that day with you so that you can witness the beauty of that first kiss. So I'm going to step back there, I'm going to sign into my computer, and then I'm going to show you the awesomeness of that day, all right? I felt like a real man for the first time ever in my life. And men are created to be protectors and to serve the woman they love, to lay down their lives for them. And for the first time, I said no to my body and my desires. And I gave my fears over to God, and I just said yes to His will for me. I finally figured out the solution to becoming a real man, and it's to be crucified. To love another more than you love yourself. And when I made that decision, I proved to Diane and to myself that I was willing to go to the cross for her. Her happiness and fulfillment was worth the price of my life. From the point that I told Diane that I loved her enough to support her pursuing God's calling, even if it wasn't with me, she knew that I loved her more than I loved myself. She knew that I feared her pain more than my own. And she knew that I was the guy that she could give herself to in marriage. A year and a half later, her and I are standing at the altar. She's beautiful, she's dressed in white, and she's looking so beautiful and holy. And I just remember I had all my family and friends present, and they all got to witness my very first kiss with my bride. Beautiful, huh? All right, so here's the deal. I have a lot less time than I thought I had, so I'm going to try and rush through. I'm going to unfortunately leave out some things, but there's some things that I want to say, so I'm actually going to just start reading some of it because, like I said, I get off track, I start making jokes and stuff, and I take more time than I'm supposed to. Because I want to tell you a couple of things, what I want to leave you with is what I want to leave you with is that we're now on a journey, we're traveling, we're speaking, and we're sharing our story, first as a witness, but more so because we want to challenge you to take on the same promise. We want to challenge you guys to take on the same promise because we are building an army of people who are saving their next kiss for marriage. An army of witnesses, courageous witnesses, and I want you guys to join me. So, how about it? Huh? I see some faces that was the same face that I had when Diane told me. Yeah. Thank you guys for taking me back to that day. I appreciate that. It's a great story for someone else, right? So, why am I challenging you to take on this promise? What's wrong with a kiss? Remember, nothing's wrong with a kiss. Kissing is a great thing. But greatness can only come from sacrificing good for the greater good. What's a kiss anyway? You ever thought about that? I've always thought that when two people are making out, it looks, to me at least, it looks like they're trying to eat each other. It's nasty, right? But we do it. I mean, and why do we do it? Why do we desire it? Well, here's my opinion. Let me share this with you really quick. If you've ever been around a baby, and by the way, so you saw a sonogram at the end? That was our newest baby. She was pregnant at the time. Thank you. The baby was just born last week. She's 7 days old. Her name is Anna Marie. Thank you. So I left them. I miss her already. I miss my whole family. I left them to be with you guys, so you know how much I love you guys. Anyway, if you've ever been around a baby, you notice that they put everything in their mouths, right? Why do they do that? Because it's how they learn things. Well, as you get older, you start to realize that it's how the reason babies put stuff in their mouth is the same reason why we put stuff in our mouth. We learn things through our mouth because what we eat becomes what we are, right? You are who you eat. It becomes a part of you. Did I say who you eat? You are what you eat. All right, we'll get to that in a second. You are what you eat. It becomes a part of you. I'm Russian. Remember that, all right? So you take this, you eat healthy, you are healthy. You take this idea into kissing. See, I was just a little ahead of myself. Take this idea into kissing. And I do think that to some degree, people are trying to eat the other person. I mean, isn't it true that opposites attract, right? No, not all the time, but for the most part, that's usually the case. My bride and Diane and I are total opposites. She's clean, I'm messy. She's super sweet and soft. I'm a little rougher around the edges, I think that when two people kiss, in some way they are trying to consume the other because usually the other person is everything that they are not, right? And if I know that instinctively that what I eat becomes a part of me, well, guess what? I want that person to become a part of me, right? If you think about it, this idea is the initiation of what may eventually culminate or end up in sex. Two people joining themselves to the other person, where the two become one flesh. Where else does this kind of thing happen? The Eucharist, right? How do we become one flesh with the Eucharist, with Jesus in the Eucharist? We consume him, essentially through a kiss, right? This is why I believe we desire kissing so much. It's why it's such an instinctual and passionate and powerful part of our appetite. It's a way we come to know another person. It's a way we give ourselves to another person. Diane and I have been together for 7 years now, and guess what's happening? I've become more clean. She's grown thicker skin. She has become more ambitious, and I've become more awesome and sensitive. We've become more like each other, and each Mass when we receive Jesus in the Eucharist, I believe we become more like Jesus. A kiss, you cannot say it is just a kiss. A kiss is so valuable, so precious, so powerful. It can be used for great good, but it can also be used for great evil. Think about this. How was Jesus betrayed by Judas? With a kiss. Why am I challenging you to save your next kiss for marriage? Because right now our world needs courageous witnesses. The Lady Gaga and Miley Cyrus culture is telling you to do whatever you want with your body and to give it to whoever you want, whoever is willing to pay a penny. And what I am telling you is that just your kiss is worth $1 million. And your body is priceless. You girls are worth the wait. And you guys are worth the glory of the sacrifice. You all are better than what you are settling for. I don't think that the timing of this conference and my invitation are a coincidence. What is going on right now in Iraq right now is heartbreaking. I read recently that we all know that they're killing Christians. Christians are being forced to flee from their homes for their lives. They're beheading children. They're hanging fathers and they're raping mothers. They're destroying families. But in a way, we are responsible for creating this beast. Let me get back to that in a second. Just let me say this really quickly. I read an article recently that was arguing that radical groups like ISIS, they have no problem recruiting young boys or young men because most of the time the recruits don't have fathers. They grow up without a father, they grow up without a family, and usually the reason that they join is the same reason that they would join a gang. Well, if you don't have a father or family to die for, well then the gang offers you that. I need to hurry up. I just got the signal. So let me just say this really quick. Here's how, a lot of us are wondering, what can we do? Here's how we can strengthen our Christian brothers and sisters. Start being witnesses here at home. Start thinking about taking on a courageous commitment to sacrifice. Because right now our world is so afraid of sacrifice. I tell people, why not save your next kiss for marriage? And they look at me like ghosts because they're afraid. I can't do that. So witnesses like you will change that tide. I had other things to say, and I apologize. What I was saying right now is going to have to be left, and it sounds a little bit weird. But because I want to read you something, as I part with you, I'm going to read you some very timely words from St. John Paul II. Because you may not be called to give your life, to shed your blood for Jesus, but you can certainly be martyrs. Listen to this. This is a letter from, this is St. John Paul II talking to young people at World Youth Day. He says, "Dear friends, to believe in Jesus today, to follow Jesus and Peter, as Peter, Thomas, and the first apostles and witnesses did, demands of us, just as it did in the past, that we take a stand for him, almost to the point at times of a new martyrdom. The martyrdom of those who today as yesterday are called to go against the tide in order to follow the divine master, to follow the Lamb wherever he goes. It is not by chance, dear young people, that I wanted the witnesses to the faith in the 20th century to be remembered at the Colosseum during this whole year." What was the Colosseum? It was a place of fear, of death, and of persecution. "Perhaps you will not have to shed your blood, but you will certainly be asked to be faithful to Christ, a faithfulness to be lived in circumstances of everyday life. I'm thinking of how difficult it is in today's world for engaged couples to be faithful to purity before marriage. I think of how mutual fidelity of young married couples is put to the test. I think of friendships and how easily the temptation to be disloyal creeps in. Dear young people, in such a world, is it hard to believe? Is it hard to believe in the third millennium? Yes, it is hard. There is no need to hide that, but with the help of grace, it can be done. As Jesus explained to Peter, neither flesh nor blood has revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. This evening I will give you the gospel. It is the Pope's gift to you at this unforgettable vigil. The word which it contains is the word of Jesus. If you listen to it in silence and prayer, seeking help and understanding what it means for your life from the wise counsel of your priests and teachers, then you will meet Christ and you will follow him, spending your lives day by day for him. It is Jesus, in fact, that you seek when you dream of happiness. He is waiting for you when nothing else you find satisfies you. He is the beauty to which you are so attracted. It is he who provokes you with that thirst for fullness that will not let you settle for compromise. It is he who urges you to shed the masks of a false life. It is he who reads in your hearts your most genuine choices, the choices that others try to stifle. It is Jesus who stirs in you the desire to do something great with your lives, the will to follow an ideal, the refusal to allow yourself to be grounded down by mediocrity, the courage to commit yourselves humbly and patiently to improving yourselves and society, making the world more human and more fraternal. Dear young people, in these noble undertakings, you are not alone. With you, there are families, there are communities, there are priests and teachers. There's so many of you who in the depths of your hearts never weary of loving Christ and believing in him. In the struggle against sin, you are not alone. My parting words to you, do not be afraid. Do not settle. You are worth the wait. Thank you.